Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 4, Episode 17. It's called Night Terrors, so full spoilers for the episode, as always. This episode sees the Enterprise trapped in just a part of space, basically. What did they call it? A Titan bridge? Something like that? Basically,
something along those lines.
Yeah, they're stuck adrift. With this particular bridge in space that essentially siphons off energy, so they can't power the warp drive, the impulse, anything. But they came here because they got a distress beacon. They found an abandoned ship that's been missing for years, with all of the crew, barring one, dead aboard. Very mysteriously, looking like they essentially all started fighting and killing each other. Later we find that there was heavy paranoia. The final captain's log speaks of mutiny's happening, I had to kill my first officer, things like that. The only surviving member of the crew is a Betazoid who is very much out of it, murmuring random phrases, spends a lot of time unconscious, that kind of thing. And of course, whatever happened to this ship, the Britain, I believe it was, is now starting to happen on the Enterprise, and that's the crew, and I say crew, that's everyone, including the captain. Although obviously not Data. Data is immune because he's not a living being.
Troy has her own separate thing as well.
Yeah. Which explains why the other Betazoid also lived, but was obviously still affected in some way, just not the same way as everyone else. So that is the general premise of the episode. So what do you think of this one?
I actually really liked most of it. I thought it had a great atmosphere. It was kind of fun.
No, I too enjoyed it. I think the one elephant in the room that I think I have to point out is how laughably bad the dream sequence with Troy flying in space was. That was particularly silly every time it happened. Barring that though, I also quite enjoyed this. It's funny, it's one of those things where, but 20 minutes into the episode, like, they've acknowledged that whatever's starting to kind of creep into this isn't affecting Data. Data's immune to it. And I immediately thought, well, you know what, Picard, if your judgment's impaired, Data should really be acting captain. And it was within a few minutes, Data was like, acting captain's log. I'm like, oh, they did it. The crazy bastards, they did it.
Not straight away, but Picard acknowledges that, okay, maybe I can't be, I think it's the scene in the elevator with him and Riker. He's like, okay, we need to keep our wits about us. We're going to take it in turns. You go get some sleep. And then he has a moment at the top of the elevator as well. And it's after that where it's like, Data, we might have to rely on you pretty soon. Yeah.
And I appreciate that. Even at the end of the episode, once everything's solved, I mean, I like the moment where, they're kind of out of it, of course, and they've escaped the pull of this thing. And Data just turns to Picard. There's no one else on the bridge. Everyone's been sent to bed, sick bay, whatever, to go and recuperate from all this tension and crazy stuff they've been feeling. And Data says, "I'd like to make one final order as acting captain. I order you to bed, sir."
And he's just like, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. But what I really liked about it though is that Data is just left on the bridge on his own. Like, the final moment of the episode is Data standing on the bridge kind of as the sole entity who probably, I mean, Data often ends up being the secret weapon on this show because he's immune to a lot of things, but I think here it was like, no, this is like, they survived this because Data was there to actually keep everything running. And
I know it. Like, Picard's last thing is he just says, thank you. And then that's it. Cuts to this last shot.
But as you said, there's a tone to the episode throughout. I think the ultimate kind of realization of what's happening and what's going on, and because they acknowledge that this bridge that locks you in place and takes all the energy is something that's been discovered, and they talk about the first ship. It was named after the captain who first encountered this sort of phenomena, and that ship got out of it by creating an explosion using some of the cargo it had. The idea being that if you create enough of an energy blast from an explosion, it would essentially disrupt the pool and you could escape in the aftermath. But notably, this crew on this first encounter never experienced any of these mental effects that everyone's clearly going through. So there's something separate doing that. And what it turns out to be later, and why Troy's having these weird dreams, is that there's some sort of alien ship who are not intentionally trying to harm the Enterprise, but they're trying to communicate with the Betazoid through this telepathy, through sleep. I actually laughed when they started talking about how it's REM. I thought, oh, REM's behind it. I started hearing music in my head because I hear REM and I think shiny happy people.
Sure.
I was like, oh, that bald bastard's behind it. He's behind all of this. It's his fault.
Would explain a lot of things.
So it becomes this thing where I actually really like the idea of, okay, so this ship's reaching out because they want to try and solve this, and Troy realizes that this is like what she's been hearing is actually the description of hydrogen. It's the description of the hydrogen atom, and they're probably asking for that. Data says, well, they're probably asking for what they need rather than what they already have. So we just have to try and get the message across that, okay, we're ready. We'll pump out a hydrogen and you can set it off with whatever you've got. The idea that they've got a substance. I like that the solution was that simple because it let it kind of focus on just the confusing part was just the how to communicate and what's going on.
Yeah.
Because there's a quick moment when they do break free where we see like a sort of glowy blue ship. This doesn't look like any ship we've ever seen before. It's this, again, this species that they've never encountered, this other.
And I like that it's not malicious. They just and they're not actively trying to hurt anyone. It's a unfortunate byproduct of just their way of communication. They don't know how else to try. Yeah. And they're just as trapped in it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of things, of course, along the way. As this paranoia, we mentioned Picard having his moment where he's like on the bottom of the turbo lift, like sort of screaming at the ceiling. Worf tries to commit suicide after their first attempt to try and release some energy using the deflector shield. Doesn't work. Worf just goes to his quarters and tries to stab himself.
Troy can't be a warrior anymore, so screw this.
Yeah, Troy senses it and runs in and has to stop him. My favourite part of this, though, is I love now that whenever we have to show something's happening to the whole ship, we can return to the married life of one Chief O'Brien and Keiko.
I knew you were going to come to this.
Oh, it's and all it is a scene of him like waiting. He's like, "Why are you late?" It's like, "Well, I had this meeting and that meeting. They want to give me another." And she's just sort of going on about her day. It's like, but was that Tommy Doyle there? And I didn't remember the name. Tommy Doyle's actually the character, the little kid from Halloween, who is then played by Paul Rudd in Halloween.
I think it
6.
was Tommy.
Yeah. So I don't know why Tommy Doyle. Well, maybe it's because it was Tom, and that's just the first Tommy that I thought of. But
I think it might be. Yeah.
Yes, but it's like, was that Tommy Doyle there? It's like, well, why? It's like. You always make any excuse to go see him. It's like, and she sort of plays it in a sort of first, like, if I didn't know any better, see her. She's trying to flirt about it.
She is obviously not experiencing anything yet, so to her, this is just like, what's going on here?
It's like, get your hands off me. I will not be made a fool of.
And he goes off to the bar to get a drink.
Yeah, actually, I noticed that in this episode, there's actually multiple like extras who get like lines in this episode. There's an ensign who like forgets to put in the coordinates at the start or early on, and then there's the guy that O'Brien talks to in the bar who's later fighting. There's actually a few different scenes, and then there's one
with Geordie.
Yeah, on the other ship where he thinks he hears something.
I definitely recognise, and I don't know where I know him from. I've definitely seen him in something or else. But I was like, I can't bother going to IMDb and finding him.
I don't know.
But he just had one of those faces that I'm like, I'm sure I've seen you somewhere else.
It appears to be an actor named Craig Hurley, and he's been in nothing really. It's a lot of TV episodes.
Yeah. Maybe I've just seen him in some other random TV episodes then.
Maybe. So yeah, it was a lot of. It probably was one of the most effective episodes of the show so far. It actually sort of making me believe there's like lots of different people around.
There's a full functioning crew, not just the core 10 people or so that we know.
So I appreciated that. And it's not that we never have guest stars or whatever, but this was just like random ensigns and like other staff on the ship who were reacting to things. Guinan pulls out some sort of weird big alien rifle to like calm the fight that happens later on in the episode.
Yeah, she seems I wouldn't say unaffected because we don't see enough to know that she's unaffected, but she seems very in control of her faculty still.
Yeah, I was wondering this actually because when it cut to her and she was trying to like keep everyone calm, I was like, the episode never acknowledges or not whether or not she is also immune to this. Which, if she is immune to it, she should be really first officer. She should be Guinan on the bridge, just making the calls. But
she should be drafted into active service right now.
Yeah, but it never actually acknowledges one way or the other. She does seem to be at least handling it better, if nothing else.
Yeah.
because she calms down the almost riot that happens, because it is, it's quite a dark sight when they got aboard that first ship and it's just like everyone's dead and they've all just murdered each other in a variety of ways as well. They say, there's phasers, there's hand-to-hand combat, there's blades,
there's knives, and they've been like this for like weeks, I think it is, that they've been missing at this point. So
yeah, that like decomposes if they've been here for years. They're just So
they're just lying there, and it is pretty grim, and that's why when the ensign with Geordie on the other ship is like, I'm hearing noises. He's like, look, there were a bunch of dead bodies found just where you're sat. It's okay to be creeped out.
Yeah, and it's just kind of the start, and you watch Picard look at this last log that I think it's Crusher who shows him it, and Crusher's kind of like trying to really, because it's not until later in the episode they realize that what's causing all of their mental problems is that this communication is essentially taking away their REM sleep. It's taking away their ability to dream, and this is making them hallucinate. This is making them, paranoid. And I don't know if there's any actual evidence to that this actually connects to in the real world. Like, if we didn't dream, would we have mental effects from it? I'm not sure.
I mean, I don't know about not dreaming specifically, but it is basically just sleep deprivation to the extreme is what they're going through here. They're basically saying, even though you're going to sleep and you're laying down and you're not actually getting the benefits of sleep. Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's just sleep deprivation. So yeah, I think this is very plausible. I mean, or as plausible as Trek gets. Right?
Yeah, it's based on a real thing as opposed to just pulled out of the ether. Nothing to back it up, which is cool. I mean, I don't think it's like an amazing episode. I think it's a really solid, like.
I think if it didn't have the atmosphere that it does, especially for that first half or so when shit's just weird and it's happening and no one knows why, this would be a pretty average episode. But just having that atmosphere raises it quite a bit.
There's probably some truth in that, but it's a very solid, good episode. It never rises, because I think all the best Next Gen episodes typically have a very good moral point or have a very good moral debate or some kind.
Yeah.
With the exception of maybe the Borg episodes, which are just so good in terms of atmosphere and like actual action plot.
This is more along that line of style in terms of, okay, we're going atmosphere rather than moral messaging, but it's not as good as those episodes.
But really solid overall. There's a number of there's not a lot of Riker in this episode. But when he's talking to Picard on the turbo lift and he's saying he's having to fight himself and bite his tongue not to snap at people, but you get little instances of that. There's lots of little things that are happening. Like, I think even the lightings kind of reflected in this a little bit. The lightings are just a little bit darker in most of the scenes. Particularly, I noticed it when they're in the meeting room and like Worf comes in late, and he's like, "I was the tooting," and he doesn't even really explain himself. They all just kind of look at him like, "Why are you late? What are you doing?" Yeah. I did think it was because they're starting to show a little of the effect, and then immediately it's like 10 days have passed, and I'm like, wait, what? You've been adrift 10 days? So like I was almost expecting to be hanging off the ceiling as soon as I saw anything after that 10-day time jump.
Yeah. It's to be fair, they are fairly bad after that, most of them anyway.
Well, yeah, but I was expecting them to be already at killing each other levels.
True. No, I get where you're coming from.
Because the turbo lift moment with Picard is after the 10-day gap.
Yes, I believe it is.
Yeah. Whereas, I would expect it to be even further on that. And maybe that's just my misunderstanding of how long it took the other ship to completely deteriorate into madness. But given the signs that we're already showing, I kind of went, 10 days have passed? Oh, jeez.
I think it's just because it starts with just some irritation and people being annoyed. It's that the hallucinations don't really start until after that, I guess. They're not in the early stages. The odd noise here or there, I think, is in the early bit, but that's about it.
Yeah, well, there's the moments like Picard hearing his door being knocked, and then there's no one there, and just being a little annoyed by it, and just been like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Just those first like signs and glimpses. Yeah, and it moves really swiftly as well. I never felt any pacing issues in this episode. It progresses very naturally through the stages of the madness kind of ramping up, and also this idea of helplessness, the fact that they can't move at all, like literally their entire ship has just been made, defunct. It can't operate. So, and I think the ethereal mystery of these other beings who are communicating this way that we never really get to see, and I appreciate that. I kind of like, because I think there'd maybe be a temptation almost to have like a moment where the ship kind of like sits in front of them, and maybe the viewfinder doesn't come on, but it's a sort of like a moment of acknowledgement. I think keeping it as mysterious and just like, okay, some friendly beings.
They're just out there, and they're not even necessarily like friendly. They were in such a dire situation that was the only way to get out of it. But they're not necessarily antagonistic either. They're just there.
No. So straightforward for the most part, but really solid. I would say had fun with this one. Next time we're going to be having an episode called Identity Crisis. If it has any relation to the comics event of the same name from DC Comics, then I'd be very worried about how dark this is going to get. But probably not. Lieutenant Commander Jody LaForge and an old friend fight to defeat a parasite that is trying to transform them into another species. Okay. So another Geordie episode.
Interesting to see that we're getting another Geordie episode already. Well, I think it was just last episode that we had one, right?
Yeah. That's a bit interesting. So there you go. We'll see that next time. Let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at @mail_fuzz for channel updates. Of course, you can support us over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month, and that helps keep all the content coming. So please go have a look and see if you're interested. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Keep watching Star Trek, and remember that somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher is in complete control.